Cheerio, mate. Top of the morning to you. Cheers. But what if the part of Mormon history that you were told not to question is the exact part that explains the entire structure? I'm talking about Mormons, like the LDS religion. I do live in Utah. I'm not a church member anymore. I left because after experiencing it, reading the scripture, looking at the history, the control mechanisms, and the part that we were just taught to call sacred, I no longer believed the truth that they claim is the truth. And for me, it became too cult-like to ignore. That's my lived experience. Now, this is not an attack on your mom, your brother, your spouse, your kids, your best friend, the genuinely good people that do go to that church. Because there are good people in that system. Come on, we have to be real. There are kind people in that system. There are loving people in that system. There are people that are just trying their best inside of a world that they were born into, just like me. Good people can belong to an institution that asks them not to look too closely at its foundations. Good people can defend something that has harmed them. Good people can repeat a story before they ever get the chance to study where that story even came from. And I'm not here to try and hand you some sort of conclusion or tell you what to think. I'm just here to put the pattern right in front of you. The temple, the restricted rooms, the weird special clothing, the secret handshakes, the signs, the tokens, the sacred names, the ritual language, the worthiness interviews, and the temple recommend. The requirement that you have to prove your belief, your behavior, your loyalty, your commitment, and your paying of tithing before you're even allowed to enter the ritualistic side. And then I want to put one more piece on the table in front of you, because Joseph Smith became a Freemason in March of 1842. Soon after that, he introduced the first temple endowment to his movement, his religion that he had started, not decades later, not after like an unrelated lifetime, very soon after he was initiated. The Nauvoo Lodge records document Joseph Smith's Masonic initiation in March of 1842. On May 4th, he introduced the endowment to 9 men in Nauvoo, and those men were also Freemasons. Now, to be honest, you can decide what that means. Maybe you believe Joseph Smith restored something ancient. Maybe you believe that Masonry preserved fragments of the original temple ceremony. Maybe you believe that Joseph Smith borrowed a ritual system that he had just encountered and then just gave it a new religious frame. Maybe you believe the truth is more complicated than just one or any explanation. But you cannot honestly say that there is no pattern to investigate. And if you're willing to even look at this pattern with me without borrowing someone else's conclusion, you can just comment, "I will look again." Because let's be real. If a man enters an organization structured around private rituals, ceremonial clothing, symbolic handshakes, signs, tokens, oaths, controlled access, staged progression, and insider recognition, and then within weeks, he introduces a religious ceremony with a private ritual, ceremonial clothing, hand clasp, signs, tokens, covenants, controlled access, stage progression, and insider knowledge. You do not have to hate him to just even ask questions, bro. You do not have to hate believers to ask a question. You do not have to decide the conclusion before you notice the timing. You just have to be honest enough to say, bruh, there is a connection. And the historical timeline isn't vague. It's kind of specific. We have documents that prove it. Joseph Smith became a master mason on March 15th, 1842. The very first temple endowment followed in early May 1842. The historical debate is not whether he joined Masonry or whether the early endowment came afterward. It is about what the overlap. Church-linked historical discussions have acknowledged both the timing and the ritual similarities while maintaining that the temple endowment meaning and its purpose are very distinct and different from Masonic rites. But truly, I need you to understand something. The exact question that I have is not whether temple ritual is a word-for-word replica of every Masonic degree. Because it's not. And it's not accurate to say that every Mason progresses through some single 33-degree ladder. The foundational Masonic lodge system has 3 degrees. The Scottish Rite degrees, 4 through 32, those are the additional system, while the 33rd degree is actually just given to honorary recognition members who have had exceptional service. So I'm not building this on like a weak claim someone can knock down in 10 seconds. I'm building it on like what there is. Founder with direct Masonic experience. Let me repeat that again. Joseph Smith became a master Mason, March 15th, 1842. A religious ritual was introduced in his religious movement very shortly after that experience. Ritual architecture. They all include recognizable similarities, an institution that restricts access to its most important ceremony, a culture that tells people that the private ritual must not ever be discussed in detail outside of the approved setting, a system that attaches temple access to worthiness, tithing, belief, covenant, behavior, family, identity, and eternal consequences. That's not nothing, bro. That is the entire architecture of authority, because ritual is never just ritual, dude. Ritual tells your nervous system what is real. Ritual tells your body when to feel fear. Ritual tells your mind who is inside and who is outside. Ritual also tells you that people with that information have something that you need. And when the ritual is connected to your eternal family, your marriage, your salvation, your reputation, your community, your ancestors, and your image of yourself as a good person, it becomes incredibly hard to question without feeling like you're risking your entire world. That is not a flaw in you. That is how the systems work, bro. A secret handshake is never just a handshake. It's two conscious beings touching each other, but saying to each other, I recognize you. A token is never just a token, bro. It says that you have received something that others don't have. A password is never just about the words. It says, you may enter this room. And to everyone else, it says, you cannot. A temple recommend is never just a card. It's like a gate. It's a boundary. It's a mechanism that decides who gets access to the inner room and who has to remain outside. And I know the response, bro. It's not secret. That's just sacred. Okay. I actually understand why believers say that. But if it is sacred, why is the history around it treated like it's dangerous to investigate? If it is divine, why should the timeline of these events even threaten it? If it is revelation, why should anyone become uncomfortable when people compare the rituals to the structure that Joseph Smith entered, was initiated into, and then created something himself? Because if truth is truth, it does not recommend or require you to stop thinking. It does not need you to be afraid of the sources. It does not need you to call questions anti-Mormon before you even looked at the evidence. All I'm saying is that somebody who has been inside of this type of mindset, you can be taught to fear information so deeply that your own curiosity starts to feel like a spiritual attack. You can be taught that discomfort comes from the adversary. You can be taught that doubt is like moral failure. You can be taught that questions are dangerous because the world wants to pull you away from your family, your salvation, or your identity. You can be taught to be honest and still be scared. But what happens when the fear is not protecting you from the lies? What happens is the fear is protecting the institution from your questions. Really sit with that. I'll say it one more time. What happens when the fear is not protecting you from the lies? What happens when the fear is protecting the institution from the questions? The most effective control system is not the one that silences you. It's the one that teaches you how to silence yourself. You don't need somebody standing over you if you've already learned to correct your own thoughts. You don't need to be behind a locked door if you have learned to be terrified of what happens when you walk through it. You don't need someone to tell you not to research if you have been trained to believe research itself into this church is betrayal. That is why I am talking about this whole Masonic thing, bro, is huge. This pattern shows up everywhere. It's in high control religions. It's in political movements. It's in secret fraternities. It's in corporations. It's in cults. It's in militaries. It's in families. It's in any system that connects identity, fear, belonging, loyalty, morality, and the access to truth. The more that systems can make your entire life dependent on staying inside the circle, the more difficult it will become for you to leave, even when something inside of you knows that it's not right. And then you look at the bigger Joseph Smith story, a man from a world of treasure seeking, a man associated with seer stones and hidden objects, a man who claimed to access buried records and ancient knowledge, a man who built a movement around special revelation, a man who created some sort of sacred hierarchy, a man who established ritual access, a man who became a mayor, a man who commanded the Nauvoo Legion, like a military army. The same man who ran for president was also a man who was killed before that story even finished. Now, you can explain every single one of those pieces on its own, but if you put them together, treasure-seeking, seer stones, hidden records, angelic messages, gold plates, secret knowledge, Masonic membership, temple initiation, sacred clothing, signs, tokens, covenants, a city, a militia, political ambition, that is not Sunday school flannel board stories. That's a power story, bro. Power stories deserve scrutiny because the question is not, were these people evil? It's like, what kind of system is being built here, bro? What is the restoration? What is an adaption? What is a new religion using symbiotic tools, ritual language, social structure available in the 19th century in America? What is revelation? What is manipulation? What is a complicated mix of belief, charisma, innovation, borrowed forms, spiritual hunger, and human ambition? You can land wherever you want to land with this, but nobody should be able to shame you into looking at the evidence first. And I want to be generous here, okay? I know people who are still members of this church. I know people who have beautiful memories that are tied to these Mormon temples. I know people who have found community, service, meaning, stability, and a family inside of their church. And I don't want to insult their experience at all to tell the truth of mine. A beautiful memory does not erase a troubling historical question. A moment that we feel is spiritual does not erase the reality that emotionally intense rituals can shape people profoundly. A feeling of peace does not automatically settle questions about origin, influence, authority, secrecy, or control. Your experiences may have been real. Your emotions may have been real. Your love for your family may have been real, and the institution can still be worth examining. Both can be true. The church has also revised temple practices over time. For example, official church history notes adjustments to temple work across its history, including changes in the clothing practices and who can serve as witnesses. Independent timelines have also documented major revisions to endowment wording and presentation, including a substantial 2019 and a 1990 change. It does kind of matter, because if a ceremony is presented as ancient, eternal, unchanged, directly restored from God, and then changes raise reasonable question. What is eternal? The principle, the script, the gesture, the covenant, the language, the garments, the ceremony, or is the institution's authority to change it? Again, I'm not trying to get you to think of any sort of answer. I'm just giving you permission to even ask questions about things you've been questioning. Because if you love just this idea of being open-minded, you have to question everything, bro. You can honor your parents and still investigate your childhood. You can respect someone's spiritual path and still decide whatever their path is isn't evidence for you. You can say that experience was sacred to you, without allowing anyone to tell you that you must surrender to that spiritual experience. You can leave a corrupt system without becoming cruel towards the people who are still in it. And you don't have to label every believing member as brainwashed. Some people stay because they actually genuinely believe. Some people stay because they're scared because their family's there. Some people stay because the social cost of leaving it is too big. Some people stay because they have religious trauma. Some people stay because they have not yet allowed themselves to read what we have been reading or talk about what we have been talking about. Some people stay because they have come to different conclusions. And to be honest, that's their journey, bro. But your journey belongs to you. And with all of this, I just want to leave you with some spiritual gold. Your soul does not need a gatekeeper in order to be worthy of truth. You do not need some sort of temple recommend or some middleman to even ask a question. You do not need a bishop to approve your discernment. You don't need a prophet to authorize your thoughts in your conscious mind. You don't need an institution to grant you permission to look at history. If God is real, if truth is real, then neither one is threatened by an honest investigation. So look at the timeline of this. Look at the Masonic connection, the symbols, the ritual architecture, who gets access, what people are asked to sacrifice to remain inside, what they fear of losing if they leave. Look at how the system reacts when someone just asks simple questions. And then look inside of yourself. What did you inherit before you were old enough to even choose it or question it? What question have you avoided because you were taught that the question was dangerous? What part of you still believes that someone else must approve your ability to search for truth? Because in my personal opinion, the deepest initiation is not inside of a temple. It's not inside of a lodge. It's the moment that you remember and just reclaim your own discernment. The moment that you stop outsourcing your consciousness. The moment you realize that you can love people without lying to yourself. The moment you understand that truth has never been your enemy. And if you're willing to look at the pattern, sit with the question, follow the evidence wherever it may lead, not where fear tells you to stop, but where the evidence leads, you can just comment, I love Team Human. I love you guys.